Well, thanks for joining us today. I always comment about recognizing how valuable each of our, various times are and wanting to make sure we give as much value as humanly possible for you. Today, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. We're going to be talking with Ashley Lacer. And welcome, Ashley. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and for those of you who may not know her, Ashley is the founder of Michelle Mae, and she's a seasoned expert in retail and manufacturing. And it's an interesting company. Under her leadership, Michelle Mae has grown 80%, and Ashley prides herself in particular on building strong, trusting relationships with partners, which is obviously sort of at the heart of the art of feminine negotiation. So we're going to be talking today about negotiating as a successful entrepreneur and what that involves as you're juggling the rest of life as well. So I'd love to start actually with like what inspired your journey from that sort of mom to entrepreneur, and I guess how did it shape your approach to building Michelle May?
Sure. So, about 8 years ago, when I was having my second child, I moved to a new town. I didn't know anybody. And so I started an online community of women on the retail space, so selling directly to consumers to try to help women kind of feel confident about themselves as a new second time mom. Now I was having some insecurities about
Yeah.
myself and wanted to find clothing that helped me feel good, that was also easy to wash and wear because I now had two children. And that kind of grew into a large online community. We got a storefront. But in that process of buying products for the store, we're very size inclusive. And so we offer extra small through 4X. I learned that the fashion industry is not equal or inclusive of all sizes.
Yeah.
And so we were having a really hard time stocking the same styles for women of
Yeah.
all sizes. And I kept coming up to barriers. And instead of trying to get people to make the sizes I needed, I decided to found Michelle Mae and make them myself, and then
Wow.
sell to other women boutique owners like me that were struggling with the same problem.
Yeah. I love that. And why the name? Just out of curiosity, where did Michelle May come from? That just
It's
struck
the
me.
middle name of my two daughters.
Oh, I love that. I'm glad I
So my
asked.
daughters are Sawyer Michelle and Haley Mae.
That's so good. Great names, by the way. I love that. Now, and you touched on a subject that is, I think near and dear to a lot of women's hearts. And, we are so conditioned, I think, as women to continue to make ourselves smaller, right? I think literally to make ourselves play smaller, but also metaphorically. And size zero for me was a particular pet peeve. It was like, well, are women supposed to be invisible now? What the hell is next? And I know that you just mentioned about really having this commitment to be size inclusive. And I'd love your thoughts on sort of what prompted that in particular. Like I know you said about having some insecurity yourself, but what led you to be so passionate about that?
I think that as women, sometimes it's easy for us to isolate ourselves in all kinds of ways
Yeah,
or to size up ourselves
yeah,
in all kinds of ways, metaphorically speaking, not just sizes in our bodies, but in business professions, all kinds of things. We often find ourselves comparing ourselves to other people.
God, yeah,
And I thought about what it would be like to go into a store and not be able to shop there because they didn't have something that fit me, and how
yeah,
isolating that could feel,
yeah,
whether that's online or in the store, etc. And I've been in various business settings where I've felt kind of isolated.
yeah,
And I'm a firm believer that every woman is created exactly how they're supposed to be.
yeah,
And I think that the fashion industry should serve all women. And
yeah,
so it's really passionate for me to be able to offer a brand that has, the quality, the consistency, accurate sizing too is important to me.
yeah,
And something else that some people don't realize is a lot of wholesalers charge more money for extended sizing. I
yeah,
don't do that.
yeah,
Whether you're buying an extra small or a 4X, if you're buying my Michelle Mae brand, you're paying the same price regardless, because I think it should be the same price.
yeah. I love that. I love that. And I mean, the fashion industry is brutal, I think, for women's self-esteem, right? But and it's interesting, you touched on so much there. That inconsistency. My gosh, it drives me crazy when you go in and, something you'd be a size six somewhere and somewhere else it's size 10, and women get all fun. I mean, I never care about the size or the weight or the scales. Just do I feel good? But I remember once, and I was always had a high metabolism, so was, tall and but quite slim. And I went into a shop, I was looking for jeans, and the clerk literally looked me up and down and went, "Oh no, we wouldn't have anything in your size." And I was like, "Oh my God, like I can't imagine how much more challenging it is for women. I mean, I'd never had an issue about sort of weight, and it just devastated me. And even things like maternity leave, we've come a long way, but I remember, my God, women had to wear, it was like we were infantilized. If you were pregnant, you had to wear things with little bows and polka dots and all cutesy. So,
Yes. Well, I just got done having my third and final child, a boy this
congrats.
time. Thank you. So he's 9 months old now.
Yeah,
And I did not have to buy any maternity clothes because my entire line is made with like stretchable, forgiving fabrics. And I was able to wear
nice.
them the whole time. And it was great. And
Yeah,
so I agree with my first two children, my maternity clothes were very much like not, they didn't make me feel very good. I
yeah,
wanted to be like, I'm still a regular human. I'm just happy to treat
exactly.
another human right now. So anyway, but it's been interesting. And so we're very much word of mouth. And I think that one of the kind of negotiations you could say is the consistency of our communications with our clients.
Yeah,
It's not like a face-to-face of, oh, this is a product and this is a price and all these different things. But for me, earning a client's respect and trust
yeah.
opens the conversation to so many more things. And we've made some really big mistakes as a manufacturer and as a brand. And kind of how I've navigated those things is I have been brutally honest to the point where some people would think, oh, you gave them too much information. And I was like, but they're giving me their
Yeah,
money for a product.
yeah,
Why would I not give them all the information? Because
yeah,
one day, if I need grace,
yeah,
they're going to know that I've never held anything back from them. And I
yeah.
think transparency in companies is kind of a lost tool sometimes.
Well, not just company. You're totally speaking my language, Ashley. Let me tell you, I'm like just zing it, and I'm sure the audience who knows me are like, "Oh my gosh, no wonder Cindy wanted her on." And we are so conditioned to hold our cards close to our chest, and we believe that somehow that any kind of vulnerability or transparently puts us at a disadvantage in, and not just in retail or in out in as an entrepreneur, but in any negotiations, frankly. And I think the opposite is true. At its core, it's about building relationship with people
Absolutely.
and building
Yep.
trust. And it sounds like you've got that mastered, which is gorgeous. And I just want to circle back before we unpeel that a bit, because I know one of the things that really attracted me to your company as well is you're really committed to ensuring representation of plus size models as well. And since we were talking about that sort of size zero and women feeling this pressure, why was it important for you to have that?
Just because I think that it's one thing to say you sell all sizes, but it's another to show
Yeah,
women the clothing on someone that they resonate with.
yeah,
And in an ideal world, if time and money were never an object, I'd like to have 8 different models of all
yeah,
the sizes and all the
yeah,
things. But we have, some limitations locally about who's available. But we just found a new great gal. She's been super fun to work with. And I just think that when you see yourself in somebody else, it helps connect
yeah,
there.
yeah.
And having plus size models has been critical to our brand message since day one.
I think that's so important. I mean, Gina Davis has done some great work about the visibility issue, right? For women generally, women in the media. And certainly you're right. We rarely see plus size models. And I'd hate to think if you look at whether Angelina Jolie or some of these like who are so tiny on screen where they talk about the fact that it's adding weight. I can't even imagine in person what that must look like. And when you're constantly bombarded with those kind of images as being the sort of standard that you need to aspire to. So, and let's talk about mindset for a second, because not everybody, I see that as a major negotiation, probably our most important negotiation, right? Like, so what tips would you have on, how we can negotiate our mindset to maximize our opportunities for success, both personally and professionally, because you seem to have that nailed.
As far as mindset goes, so my grandparents were really critical in raising me, and they had a small business. They did land surveying. His business partner did surveying as well, civil engineering, excuse me. And
Yeah,
so from a very young age, I was taught if you treat people right, and if you're honest in business and in personal life, everything will come back around. Even in the darkest days, both personally and professionally, if you just tell people what's going on. And so that kind of work ethic that they taught me has resonated with everything I've kind of ever
yeah,
done. And even with my staff, I make mistakes as a leader and I have to come to them and have humble pie and say, hey guys, I made a mistake. I made the bad call. This is how it's going to impact us. These are the extra hours it's going to take us to work through this
Yeah.
problem. And I think that just the full transparency,
Yeah.
there is a trust in when the person across the conversation doesn't have to question your motives,
Yeah.
doesn't have to question if you're holding something back, doesn't have to question what is she leaving out, what's the aha moment, what's the fine print. Like, I don't come
Yeah.
with fine print. I just don't.
Yeah.
I want people to get the full me all the time.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
I think we as women deserve to give that to each other too, and to
Absolutely.
be reserved and have mutual respect. We are all individuals and unique physically, mentally, spiritually, in all the different ways. And I think each woman's just created how they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I think if we navigate business more that way and just have more open conversations and don't hold back,
Yeah.
I think we can all go a lot farther.
Yeah. I love that your grandparents instilled that sort of messaging with you. It really resonates with me. I remember growing up, my father, I grew up in a low rental apartment in what was considered a tough neighborhood. My dad worked in a factory and always instilling everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. Whether you're the janitor or a brain surgeon in the hospital, everybody's job is important. And so long as you show up and give 100% and treat people with kindness, and that really always stuck with me. And I
Right.
want to put a pin for our listeners because something Ashley said there really struck a chord as well when you'd said about women deserve to treat each other that way, because I think there's so much conditioning around competition from this scarcity mindset about what's available for us. I often joke, and it's not funny, that sometimes we see women who sort of break through the glass ceiling. They don't reach down with a hand and help other women come up before they go out and hire a professional glazier to, because it's like, oh, don't let anybody up here. So I love your philosophies around how you run a business and how you show up. So, and
Yeah, I think one of the other things my grandma always taught me that there actually is no glass ceiling. She
nice.
always raised me to never think that there's a limit to what I
Yeah.
want to do, which sometimes drives my husband crazy because I'm like, I have a new idea. But something else is that if we're not helping each other, who's helping us besides just
Absolutely.
ourselves? And that comes back to that whole isolation thing where I think sometimes we feel alone in what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so whenever other boutique owners have reached out, I've tried to help however I can. Like I said, I don't have a lot of fine print with how I
Yeah.
approach business or my personal life.
Yeah.
And I think that if we just do, there's a group I'm a part of, and their big motto is community over competition.
Yeah.
And I really try to live that way because the world needs more of that.
Yeah.
And if we all lift each other up, we're all
Yeah.
better for it. And why would
Absolutely.
we not want to help the person right next to us? Because what if we need help next?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that so goes to the heart of the art of feminine negotiation, right? And again, using negotiation in the broadest possible sense, whether
Yeah.
from those micro interactions to those big business deals, when we see everybody else as competition as opposed to potential collaborators, you get less, right? I mean, as soon as you open up to a more abundant mindset, looking to be of service and collaborating, and coming from curiosity, more and more opportunities arise for everybody. And you've mentioned a couple of times, and again, I love that approach about, hey, I've made mistakes, and you're very transparent about it. And I'm a big believer in what you call failabrations, right? Celebrating our failures
We've
and
got lots of those.
recognizing them as learning opportunities for growth. So I think you've already touched on it, but if you can share your thoughts on failure and maybe how we can shift our mindset around how we look at it.
Sure. So I'll start with kind of the biggest failure. Well, I've had quite a few, but one of the bigger failures that I experienced was the end of last year. So I was very pregnant and I got served lawsuit papers.
Oh,
I had bought fabric from overseas. I made some shirts years ago, like
yeah.
3 years ago. And the print was supposedly registered. It was a copyrighted print.
Oh, gee.
But the people I bought the fabric from had no idea. I
Yeah.
had no idea. The style had been sold out for like 2 years at this point.
Yeah.
We didn't make any money off the style at all because
Yeah.
it didn't actually sell that well.
Yeah.
But in that process, it was very stressful. So I decided to settle because I was close to
Yeah.
delivering my son and big lawyer, scary words,
Yeah.
lawsuits, lots of dollars, all the things. It wound up being kind of not that big of a deal, but the process was a
Yeah.
big learning for me. And
Yeah.
so I did what we should have done more often. which was reach out to other people or women that might have been there before us and say,
Yeah.
what should I do next time? So then I got a PR team, which is how I actually met you.
Yeah.
They helped me find designers to make. So now I'm making all of my own prints or buying licensed prints only. So anything you buy from Michelle Mae is guaranteed to be a safe print. I very much believe in intellectual property rights. And so I just started building my network. I got a better attorney. All women.
Yeah. Nice.
And it was one of those things where instead of just closing in and being ashamed of this thing that I didn't even intentionally make a mistake
Of course.
for, but intentionally or not, mistakes are going to happen.
Yeah.
And instead of trying to hide it, I kind of blasted it to everybody. And I was like, I did this thing, didn't know I did it.
Yeah.
How can I get better from there? And so now I have great designers. We have better prints. My PR team's been amazing. But
Yeah.
had I not just made those first phone calls and just asked for help, because none of us can ever be the top
Yeah.
of anything. There's
Yeah.
always going to be somebody better.
Yeah.
And if we can just reach out and grab that olive branch and learn, they'll learn from our experiences too in that process.
Yeah. And how much more valuable? I mean, so often we carry like these shameful little secrets, right? And even the language here, a lot of people see, oh, if you settle a lawsuit, that's like a failure. No, quite the opposite. Our legal system, as a lawyer for 35 years, I can speak to, most win, lose, or draw, people who go through that process feel like they just, did 15 rounds with, Muhammad Ali. I'm dating myself here, but it's like, so I mean, knowing when to sort of cut your losses because the stress and the is not worth it is a massive advantage. But for me, the biggest takeaway from what Ashley's saying for our listeners there is she took something that could have been sort of a failure and turned it into a massive growth opportunity that has actually helped her business exponentially. So
Well, and then that lesson came back around because the same attorney came knocking a second time.
yeah,
And so we took the lessons from that process and we decided to not settle the second time
yeah.
because
Wow.
I
Okay.
don't need to. I didn't make any money. I knew the laws better. I knew the rules
Yeah.
better, and I was more educated. And so we decided to not settle.
Well, it sounds like that attorney was a bit of a player, and there's a lot of that out there as well, right? Trying to take advantage. Now, when we talk about sort of values that guide you in your business, because I think a lot of people we've been so conditioned again to believe that to be a successful entrepreneur or negotiator, and which all involve the same skills, it means you got to be tough, you got to have power over, and I believe the opposite. And you've already talked about sort of that transparency and relationship and showing up with integrity. Any other values that you would say have really guided you, Ashley?
I always put people before profit,
Yeah, I love that.
whether that is my staff, whether that's my customers, whether that's my family or myself.
Yeah.
I will never let the desire for a dollar change my core beliefs of who I am or how I should treat people.
Oh, yeah. I think I'm getting a girl crush on you. You're saying all the right things here, let me tell you.
Yeah, and then that comes back to my grandparents. I mean, at the end of our days, when I look back at my life, I want to have an impact on people more so than I want dollars in my bank account.
Yeah.
Can't take it with
And,
me.
and again, we're so taught that's not going to give you sort of success with a capital S. And you're living proof that the opposite is true. It has helped your business flourish. It's helped you create a loyal, dedicated audience that continues to grow, right? A client base. Now, sometimes in business, doing, the so-called right thing isn't always easy. I'd love if you could share sort of a moment. We talked a bit about integrity and how that sort of guides your decision-making process. And you'd said about not putting profits over people. Was there ever a time when it came at a cost for you that you can think of off the top of your head?
Yeah, actually, just a couple weeks ago, we got our second largest shipment of the entire year. We're at peak fall season, and my manager called and said, "There's a problem with the shipment. You need to get here right away." And my heart kind of sank. We've navigated all kinds of things. We've been doing this now for
Yeah.
about 6 years, and a damaged shipment can mean all kinds of things, but it's never been catastrophic entire shipment.
Wow.
Well, they were shipped with something that smelled like acetone.
Oh dear.
So I had 2,000 units
Oh,
smelling like acetone.
yeah.
Well, the good news about acetone is if you air it out and just wash it one time, the smell goes away.
I
The
did not
bad
know that.
news is we're an apparel company and I can't wash 2,000 units and
Yeah.
then sell it new. So for other people, it might work out. For us, it did not. So my staff spent about a week and a half unbagging, hanging up, airing out 2,000 units, refolding, rebagging.
Wow.
And when we went to pack some more, we could still smell some acetone. And we were like, we can't sell these. The manufacturer would not really refund us any money. The shipping company would not compensate us because they were
Wow.
saying nothing happened and it wasn't damaged, but you can't see the damage, but it was there.
Yeah.
And so we decided to be fully honest with everybody. We had pre-sold half the units. So
Wow.
we had to email every single person that bought, tell them what happened. We gave them a credit. And then we sold them below cost, full disclosure of what was wrong with them.
Yeah.
We said our options are, I could not afford a loss of that to just donate them or give them away. I had to recover some of my costs. And
Yeah.
so we were brutally honest. We sent
Yeah.
pictures of the process of the folding and the tagging and the hanging, and then we kept our clients in the story the
Yeah.
whole time. And they showed up and supported us. And we've now sold through 80% of the damaged product. It'll
Wow.
still be a loss,
Yeah.
but a much smaller loss than it would have been if I just didn't talk about it,
Yeah.
didn't share it, and didn't ask for them to help me.
Yeah. And also, you did it with integrity rather than breach that trust that you've spent all these years building. And what a beautiful example that is for our listeners to recognize showing up with that strength, but also compromise, right? And most importantly, staying true to our beliefs. We so often sacrifice those values thinking that we want that immediate sort of, whether it's that immediate dollar, that immediate hit, that, avoid the delayed gratification. And here's a beautiful illustration of how the opposite is true. Just always stand in a place of integrity, stand in your values when you're negotiating, whether personally or professionally. And I wonder, how do obviously in your business, you've had a lot of negotiations. How do you personally decide sort of when to stand your ground, if you will, versus when to concede? And what do you learn from your experiences, would you say?
I kind of think I always go on if I was on the other side, how would I receive
Yeah,
my own request? Does my
yeah,
request seem to be reasonable within the bounds of something that I would expect somebody to ask of me? And so I really try to not ask something that's so far out there that I myself would not be willing to do.
yeah,
And when I make those requests, because sometimes we order certain fabrics in higher bulk, of styles we order all the time. We're like, well, if we order all of these, can we get a price cut on
yeah,
fabric costs
yeah,
or shipping times? Hey, there's all kinds of moving pieces.
yeah,
But for me, before I press that send button on any kind of request, whether it's more time with staff or anything like that,
yeah,
I ask myself, if this came in my inbox or a message across my phone, or if somebody asked this to my face, what would my initial response be?
yeah,
And then I try to curtail how I ask based upon that, just
yeah,
because golden rule, don't treat people how you wouldn't want to be treated yourself.
yeah, yeah. And again, so in line with, what I call it the art of feminine negotiation, but this idea about bringing empathy, really at its core, that's what it's about. Show up with empathy, put yourself, truly try to put yourself in the shoes of the other party. And again, for our listeners, imagine what a better world it would be for you in your personal relationships, in your professional relationships, even playing out on the global scene today. Imagine what a different world it would be if we all showed up truly seeking to understand the needs of people on the other side. So you seem to, I don't know if it's intuitive or if you've studied this, but you seem to beautifully model what I think are exceptional sort of negotiating best practices, if you will, right? Now, sometimes I imagine you've had to deal with that industry in particular, but for our listeners generally, we end up having to deal with bullies or people who are trying to exert power over us. Do you have any tips or stories to share about how to negotiate with people who are trying to exert power over you rather than taking that power with approach?
I kind of have, I know some people say just kill them with kindness is
Yeah.
usually like a very PC way to respond. I lost my grandparents about 2 years ago.
I'm sorry.
And thank you. I think in that moment I realized that life is actually pretty short.
Yeah.
And I don't really do the bully thing anymore.
Yeah.
I recently had an interaction with another wholesaler where we were actually making two very similar products. I didn't know she was doing it. She didn't know I was doing it. Mine were already in production. And I reached out and I said, hey, like, no idea you were doing this. We've already ordered those things. Long story short, come full circle. I found out she lied to other retailers about myself and my brand.
Wow.
I don't understand why women feel the need to do this.
Yeah.
I didn't make a big deal about it. I didn't post anywhere. I kept it to myself. I will not say the names because it doesn't matter. And in that, they blocked me on Facebook and they bullied into the sense of there's some big markets that I have not been invited to because they've spoken up against me. And
Wow.
I very much believe that there is enough business for everyone. No matter
I
what
agree.
industry you're in, there's enough business for everyone. And I thought that this could have come across as a collaboration. Like if we sold out of these things, I could
Yeah.
send them to her because she had something very similar. And if I was sold out, everybody can still make money. Like I thought it
Yeah.
was a really cool thing, actually.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, I've dealt with bullies in the business sense. That's the most recent one. It was kind of sad just because I don't approach people that way.
Yeah.
So I just don't dwell on it. If
Yeah.
someone's going to come at you and be a bully and those kinds of things, my new take is life is too short
Yeah.
and I just walk away. I don't engage. I don't need to
Yeah.
fight. I consider myself to have more class than that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go where I don't have to ask for a seat at the table.
Yeah.
I'm going
Well,
to
and I
be,
love you're not stewing about it, right? I think for so many of us generally, and I think women in particular, we really internalize and then we sort of pick and pick and pick at the scab and it drives us crazy, even though, so the fact that you were able to just release it and move forward, right? That's,
yeah.
I don't have control over how other people decide to show up, and I'm not going to let it knock me off my value sort of
And
system.
yeah, and you can never control what somebody else is going to say or do, but you
Yeah.
can always control your reaction.
Yeah.
And that's something else my grandparents taught me is if you can
Absolutely.
control your reaction with class, then you'll be
Yeah.
able to make through business okay as well.
Your parents were ahead of the curve. Like this is all very cutting edge, trendy kind of personal development stuff now. So they were definitely ahead of the.
My grandparents were the beacons and the iconic people in my life that
Yeah,
really shaped the foundation for who I am.
that's so lovely. I love the love and respect that you speak about them with. Now you've talked a bit about sort of that community, if you will, and helping, a rising tide lifting all boats. How do you personally sort of lever, what tips do you have, I guess, for our listeners on how to leverage connections, right? And mentorship, if you will, to help foster empowerment within whatever industry?
I think there's a lot of online communities. And so if you have a certain business or segment or market that you're serving or wanting to serve, find some online communities because a lot of times people will ask questions. And if you have an answer, give them the answer or say, hey, I had experience with this. Would you like to hear my story? For me, this whole copyright issue was very big.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of lack of education in the boutique world space and the manufacturing space, specifically around prints, trademarks, copyrights, what's a trademark versus a copyright.
Yeah.
And I had a crash course in having to learn all those things. And I'm spending my time and my money putting together a full seminar with my attorney, my PR team that'll be free because I think people need to have the education.
Yeah.
And I'm passionate about it because I don't want another women business owner to be sitting at their house,
Yeah.
pregnant or not pregnant, getting served papers,
Yeah.
something that they've never seen before because they're
Yeah.
vulnerable. A
Yeah.
lot of people don't have finances to go get the big attorney to go fight for them. So
Yeah.
whatever you're passionate about, if you've learned a lesson that you think people need to know, don't hide it.
Yeah.
Try to help other people navigate through it. I had an older sister. I learned at a very young age to watch Sissy's mistakes and don't repeat them. I had a very good older sister. She's actually one of my best friends. But our nature is to watch and learn,
Yeah.
right? And so I try to watch and learn a lot. But then if I have an opportunity to have somebody watch and learn from me, my door is
Yeah.
always going to be open.
Yeah. And I think it's something we sort of lost sight of. And I'm really hopeful that we're seeing that shift back again. Coming from a place of service can be such a game changer, right? When we get away from that competitive mindset, away from that need to be exerting power over, get away from a win-lose mindset and looking at that more collaborative approach. When you're offering, as you obviously do, Ashley, come from a place of service for others, we all grow. And I agree with you about business. Ironically, the more we collaborate, it's not a matter of, oh, there's this finite pie. The more we collaborate, the more work it creates, the more of an audience it creates, right? A bigger client base. It's such a Such a
Yeah.
mindset shift that can make such a profound difference. So now, how do you sort of maintain? You obviously show up with a great sense of empowerment, and it sounds like you've had a lot of sort of changes that you've had to adapt to and face and challenges within the industry. So, what tips do you have on how to maintain a personal sense of empowerment, a professional sense of empowerment while we're facing those kind of changes or challenges?
For me, I just try to remind myself what's really important in my life. Even in the hardest times, like for example, take my staff. My staff shows up every day. They work harder. I mean, I have a tiny but mighty team, and they probably do the same work as double the amount of staff
Yeah,
elsewhere, you could probably say. But I remind myself that, like, why am I coming to work every day? Who am I building this company for? It's not just for me. So my team is kind of at the heart of why I'm trying to do these things with the
yeah,
company, make it more stable. We've obviously been here for 4 years since the onset of the COVID discussion. That impacted the world a lot, especially
yeah,
with retail. And that's also one of the reasons why this whole company got started. So it's about pivoting. I just keep pivoting. And if you never lose sight of who you are, who you're working for. And so for me, yes, I have my customers, I have my clients, but I also have my family
yeah.
and I have my staff and my team. And it comes back to that whole people will always be put before profit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love that translates to your staff as well. Because again, as a social justice attorney for as I say, over 30 years, a lot of what I did was labor work. And I think somewhere along the line, we got it so wrong. Everything was about profits. And we stopped treating people with dignity and respect in the workplace. And it's like grinding, grinding to try and get as much work out of people for as little as possible. So it is a beautiful, refreshing shift to have you speak to what I believe at my core, which is when you treat people as part of your family, as a team, and you value them and you respect them, they are going to go that extra distance for you, right? They will be there to have your back. It is such a refreshing perspective.
There have been many times I have been brought to tears by the level of dedication, extra work that my team has given to this
Yeah,
company because they believe in what we're trying to
yeah,
do.
yeah,
And so I just really hold on to that. And I just keep pivoting and changing to try to make this a better, stronger company for them.
yeah. Well, and I love you seem to have great clarity about your vision and have sort of from the outset by the sounds of watching your progression. And again, I want to really put a pin in that for our listeners. So many of us go through life in damage control or crisis management and just focusing on our to-do list. And we don't take the time to allow ourselves the space and grace to really get absolute clarity about our vision because you can't hit a fuzzy target. So if you don't get that clarity about your vision, you're not going to be able to hit it. So can you share with us what your vision is for the future of Michelle Mae and like how do you see yourself
Sure.
continuing to influence the industry?
Yeah, so my goals for the company might not be the same as some entrepreneurs. I know some entrepreneurs want to grow and conquer and be the
Yeah.
biggest and all these different things and make all the dollars. And I just want to make enough dollars so I can provide a really good wage for my team. And I'm more about stabilizing right now. We had excessive growth. We grew like triple, almost
Wow.
4x in 21
Yeah.
alone. And since then, we've experienced all kinds of other growths. And so there's been obviously growing pains that have come with that. We've made some bad calls, we've gotten
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. But I think for me now, it's more about work-life balance for myself, for my team. And in the fashion industry, it is very fast-paced.
Yeah.
It is very exhausting sometimes because you have to be literally 6 to 12 months ahead at all the
Yeah.
times. I have 3 kids. Looking
Yeah.
at just tomorrow's breakfast schedule sometimes can be exhausting. But for me, my goal is to get a better timeline for my staff so we're not feeling behind on the seasons and the designs and all the things and just stabilizing where there's not that feeling or that need of crunch, 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 push, push,
Yeah.
push, push, push all the time
Yeah.
where it can be more relational building with our clients
Yeah.
because we have the time just to breathe while we're here.
Yeah. And interestingly, I have no doubt that taking that approach, you're going to have better products, right? Because you're allowing that grace and space rather than being in reactive sort of crisis management mode.
Correct.
I think invariably you're going to end up with better. And while you're building those relationships, it's a beautiful recipe for success.
And I think we've been in that reactive state now for probably 2 years or
Yeah.
so. We've had all kinds of challenges, one of which too was we built our own warehouse.
Yeah.
Part
Wow.
of the motivation there was my overhead for my rent kept going up. And I was like, how am I going to be able to compensate my
Yeah.
team or do all these other things I want to do financially for them if my money keeps going to landlords?
Yeah.
And so my husband and I, we sold our other investment properties in town. We went all in on this warehouse. Now my overhead is secured. I'm
Yeah.
in control of my rent. And over time, that stays the same. And so that's just one more thing of trying to put my team first and also giving them the stability of knowing we have a home, our business
Yeah.
has a home. No one's going to ask us to
Yeah.
go anywhere. We were kicked out of our lease 3 months before
Yeah.
this building was done. We were like a
Wow.
homeless business. We had to move 4,000 square foot business twice in
Jeez.
5 months.
Oh my gosh.
But they, again, staff showed up. We
Yeah.
learned a lot in the first move of what not to do or how to move product. And I didn't want to ask for help. We hired a very expensive company that got it wrong and damaged a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And the second time around, I was out of money for a big
Yeah.
move. So I just asked friends and family and they all showed up.
Yeah. Well, and under that too, what I'm hearing a bit of, Ashley, like you believe in yourself and you are, when you stand on the edge of that cliff and you're willing to believe that to take that step forward into that vision and trust that the road, the stairs or whatever are going to come out to meet you. And I think so often we're conditioned to come from a place of fear and we end up not doing that. So again, such beautiful modeling. So where can people learn more about you and more about Michelle Mae?
Sure. So Michelle Mae is a wholesale only brand. However, we're in over 1,000 stores nationally. And so if you just search Michelle Mae or Michelle Mae brand, you can find one of our many retail partners online. We do have our own retail side called Ella Lane. That's just ellalane.com. But Ella Lane is just one of thousands of amazing small businesses that you can buy Michelle Mae from.
That's fantastic. And we'll make sure for our listeners, don't panic if you didn't catch that. We'll have it in the show notes for you as well. I do encourage you always support entrepreneurial endeavors like this, frankly, where somebody is coming from a place of integrity and value and service, not just for their client base, but for others coming up through the industry, truly giving a hand and helping others sort of come up as well. That's how we're going to sort of shift away from that money first kind of approach so that more people will see the value in coming from a values-based kind of business approach and beyond. So I normally like to end, Ashley, by asking what's one of the greatest mindset shifts you've had in your life? Doesn't have to be about fashion, just one of those aha moments that has you think about something differently or show up differently.
I recently read a quote that kind of summarizes my new mindset, which is time is the only currency we don't know the balance of.
Hmm. Oh, nice.
And that
Never put
really
it that way.
resonates. Yep, that one really resonates with me. So everything I do professionally or personally, I understand that the days, minutes, hours that we have are limited. And I really try to conduct myself in a way that is respectful that time is limited.
Yeah. That's a great quote because not just limited, but
I didn't make it. You can't put my name next to
yeah,
it. I
no,
don't
no, I'm
plagiarize
gonna have to.
anybody. I just saw it online, but
I
that
love it.
stuck with me.
Because it really, I mean, it's multi-leveled, right? It's not just
Yeah,
that time is limited, but it's that we don't know the balance. Like we literally, it's limited. And for any of us in any given moment, it could be a day from now, it could be decades from now. We just never know. So make sure every conversation that you're having, you'd be comfortable with it being your last conversation. Make sure, I think it makes it easier to show up from a place of integrity
exactly.
when you buy that. I think that's a beautiful mindset shift. So thanks for sharing that. Well, and thank you for sharing all these fabulous gems. Thank you for what you do. It's been just a great conversation. So good to have you here, Ashley, and best of luck with your business going forward.
Thank you so much.
And for our listeners, there was just tons of value there. Not only was it interesting following Ashley's journey when sort of growing Michelle Mae as a company, but so many nuggets about how we can show up better personally and professionally and beyond so that we can succeed in all areas of our life, and not based on those old competitive models, but based on true collaborative models that are consistent with the art of feminine negotiation. So please subscribe if you haven't done that, and make sure to give the gift of sharing. Share this episode with other people, certainly other women in your life. Have them check out the company, support that company, and hopefully pay it forward yourself. I'd love to see the ripple effect that comes from this. And please feel free to share your stories about how you've used some of the lessons here to be able to show up and negotiate your best life. And before we sign off, just a few ways we can work together. Speaking of negotiating your best life, if that's something you're interested in doing, I've got everything from online to group to my signature mastermind or VIP available to help you better leverage your innate power so that you can get more of what you want and deserve in life in ways that are going to be more mutually satisfactory. If that sounds interesting, check it out at artoffemininenegotiation.com. And if you haven't got my book yet, for heaven's sakes, go grab a copy. It's called The Art of Feminine Negotiation. Tough to forget. And that is a wrap for this episode. Until next time, go forth and negotiate your best life on your terms so you stop missing out and you can start getting more of what you want and deserve from the boardroom to the bedroom. Until next time, take care.